All right, welcome everybody. How's everyone going? Wonderful, wonderful. Well, just want to welcome everyone to the first, the only annual general meeting of electors for 2026, unless there's another one called. But to start, I just want to acknowledge the Whadjuk people as the traditional owners of the greater Fremantle-Whadjuk area, and we recognize that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. But I also acknowledge that we meet here today on land that was never ceded, and I wholeheartedly support the many campaigns for truth-telling, justice, and reconciliation here and across this country. Okay, for folks that may not be aware, this meeting is being recorded and streamed live online, and all care will be taken to maintain privacy. Visitors in the public gallery and electors submitting a question or motion may be captured in the recording, and you probably have to say your name as well. But because of that, no photos or recording of this meeting is allowed. And if I see phones recording or taking pictures or that, I'll ask that you put those away. Great. Any questions about that? No? Okay. So we'll move on to the meat of the meeting, which is the annual report. And we have the presentation of the annual report by the Director of City Business. So I'll just go ahead and turn this over to Matt Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor Lorva. I'll keep this brief. The annual report demonstrates the city delivered on a financially responsible budget for 24-25, closing the year with a positive funding position of $9.58 million. This was in addition to favourable variances across several key areas, including higher revenue from fees and charges, higher than expected interest income, and savings in some areas of operating expenditure. We remain in a good financial position with total assets of $740 million, significantly surpassing total liabilities of $38.6 million, which saw a decrease of $1.26 million. This resulted in equity amounting to $702.2 million, demonstrating a healthy net asset position. We substantially increased the balance of our reserves from $16.9 million in 24 to $19.6 million in 25, equating to growth of $2.6 million. We saw strong growth in the delivery of our capital program year on year, going from $6.5 million in 24 to $12.3 million in 25. Depreciation expense remained lower than budgeted and moderately lower than 24, indicating a positive trend in managing the depreciation and renewal of our assets over the longer term. As with prior years, market conditions and inflationary pressures continue to keep costs high, and access to suppliers were still constrained, meaning some capital projects were delayed or rephased. Despite this, we finished the year with yet another unqualified financial audit from the OAG, demonstrating strong confidence from the state's highest statutory financial authority that our financial statements properly and accurately reflect the city's financial position. There are a number of copies of the annual report if you haven't got one available here tonight, so I strongly recommend grabbing a coffee and reading through all of the key services and outcomes delivered by the city over that year. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Matt. So at this point in the meeting, it's a little bit different than a council meeting in that we're actually going to have two public question times. So the first public question time that we're going to go into right now is for questions or statements that people have on the annual report. I know some of you may be here for things that are outside of the annual report. After we get through the annual report and there's a vote to receive the report, then we'll get to the more general public time for questions and statements and things like that. So, so for right now, I've got a few folks that have submitted questions and then a list here as well. So what I'd like to do is to start with some people who submitted questions in advance, and then we'll go to the folks that signed in right now. So to begin with, we've got these roaming mics. I'm going to try to make it work. Hello? Oh, there we go. Okay. To start with, we have Craig Ross. It's Craig? Great. And Craig, you had you submitted your questions beforehand, so thank you, and there were lots of them. There's answers to the questions, so you can either ask them all, or we can give you the answers, and then you can kind of, if you have additional questions, you can also ask those, so it's up to you.
Thank you. I'll just give a summary, just a flavour of my questions, and then I know I've only got 3 minutes, so I'll be fast then. Good evening. My name is Craig Ross. I live in Little High Street in Fremantle. I do have a number of questions and concerns over the financial report, but I'd also like to acknowledge the change in attitude at the mayoral level, and I appreciate the time you've taken to speak to me the other week. I won't read out my questions in full as mentioned because I only have 3 minutes, so just a bit of a flavour, and I trust that the administration will write down my questions and not provide evasive responses. First question is the CEO's KPIs and the lack of measurable targets and percentages. So this administration strongly opposed the public CEO disclosure of CEO's KPIs, but I'm glad that was ignored, and the CEO has to provide CPIs. However, they're lacking measurable performance targets or indicators, hard numbers or percentages. So for example, it should be, say, 80% of capital works on time and on budget. And the city's never ever done that. So that leads to my second question. So my question is, will the councillors actually put measurable performance indicators for the CEO KPI? Second question, which is leading on from that, CapEx. There's always been an underperformance of CapEx projects. So again, this year, budget was 19, actually only delivered 12. So is anyone actually held accountable for that underperformance? So my question is really about transparency and accountability. Third question, what is being sold next year for $20 million? I hope the answer was evaded last year, and I hope it can be properly answered this year. You wouldn't know it, but from the report, just from the director, the city actually made a loss of 6.3 million this year. It should actually be 9 million because I've actually incorrectly accounted for Resource Recovery Group. So if I was doing the audit, I would have written down Resource Recovery Group to nil value. And if you read, I think page 20 on the report, you will see no mention of that loss of 6.3 million. Leading on to the Resource Recovery Group, you've actually picked up the wrong audited figures in these financial reports, and you've actually said they're audited, and that's incorrect. You also have lack of the heritage asset disclosure, which I'd like to see improved. You don't have a provision for remediation at South Fremantle land tip. You have unclear underground power at South Fremantle, the cash flows around that. I'm not sure if you've signed the co-funding agreement with Western Power or you need to borrow money, but you've levied service charges to ratepayers for that. And lastly, I've got a question on this civic centre. According to the original business plan, $1 million is supposed to be raised by the tenanted area of this admin building to repay the $20 million that was borrowed. So I'm asking you a question, what has been collected from tenants in FY25? Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Craig. And we do have the 3-minute rule, you're right, but we'll kind of, play it by ear as long as everyone's kind of, good with that. We don't need to be hard and fast on the 3 minutes until it turns into a soapbox. So what I will do is turn those questions over to the administration for answering. And next up, I have Jen Thomas for some questions on the annual report. Great.
All right. Thank you for those questions. We have prepared written responses, but I'll read it out tonight for the benefit of the room. I will leave the first question regarding KPIs to the CEO to answer at the end, but I'll pick up with the others. So the question in relation to capital works performance. So our response is that the city has planned and budgeted for a strong program of capital works. This is in response to extensive engagement with elected members, the needs of the community, and of course the city's ongoing asset renewal program. While on occasion projects or programs may be delayed or require rephasing due to other competing priorities, they remain in the program to be completed. The city has, however, recently undertaken a review of project management practices and is reviewing how we align project delivery with the capital budget that is made available annually. With regards to the $20 million sale of city assets, that question, this is in relation to the proposed sale of the existing depot site as part of the future redevelopment plans for the city's operations centre. All that information is available in the published city long-term financial plan. The loss of $6.3 million you referred to, noting you were referring to the Statement of Comprehensive Income. The Statement of Financial Activity provides a much more comprehensive view of the city's overall financial position, and that indicates the city ended 25 with a positive closing position of $9.58 million. Regarding the depreciation expense, the reality is that we experienced a sharp and rapid increase in asset values a number of years ago, and consequently our depreciation also increased. It is absolutely a priority for us to address this via increased investment into our renewal programs, and this again is outlined clearly in our long-term financial plan, but it's not something that can be addressed immediately, as we'll need to manage this increased investment responsibly over time and in line with our current and future financial capacity. With regards to the question around the resource recovery group, the RRG was still operational at the balance date, so we'll continue to be guided by the auditor on appropriate accounting treatments for that one. Lack of heritage asset disclosures. We do know that this has been raised previously by yourself on several occasions. While it's something other local governments do, as per our previous responses to this question, there is no requirement to do so. And it's not been identified by us as a priority at this time. South Fremantle landfill site remediation provision. In prior years, we did disclose this in Note 19 as a contingent liability as per AASB 137. This was our preferred treatment for FY 24-25, and we did communicate this to the auditor via a position paper. However, the OAG requested a change to this disclosure, and we subsequently accepted the auditor's guidance on this occasion. We will, however, continue to engage with the auditor as part of the 26 audit on that matter. South Fremantle underground power. The TUP program is being delivered and heavily subsidised by Western Power. The City of Fremantle signed an MOU with Western Power in July 23 to progress to a detailed design, which is currently underway. Again, our long-term financial plan clearly indicates estimated cash flow and timings for contributions to Western Power as part of the project. And no, there is currently no intention to borrow funds for the project. The questions relating to Civic Centre tenants. Space being made available for commercial lease within the Civic Centre is now fully tenanted. Fit-out costs and city contributions towards this have been negotiated on a case-by-case basis as leases have been finalised, which is a standard practice in commercial leasing. The final practical completion for fit-out works is currently still being finalised. However, tenancy fit-out costs across all of the different leased spaces is estimated to be approximately $1.5 million. Tenanted commercial spaces within this building are being estimated to generate approximately $250K per annum in 26-27, noting that some of the leases may not yet be paying full rent due to rent-free periods that were provided as part of commercial negotiations. Additionally, the $250K does not factor in any additional turnover rent that will be generated, which will be the case for the two larger tenants who are on turnover rent arrangements. Thank you.
And the first question in relation to CEO KPIs, as you might understand, under the Local Government Act, Council is put together a committee of its elected members, which we have done. I think there's 5 elected members on the committee. They work with me every year to work out what we think our performance requirements are. It's based on a lot of things, some of the outcomes. We talk about how the organisation needs to improve and some of the budget requirements. And as you might notice in this year's budget requirement, there is a requirement to try and get through the capital works program. So Council are very aware of that outcome as well.
Great, thank you. Jen.
Hi everyone, my name's Jenny Thomas. I live in Freo in North Ward and I'm from Friends of Cantonment Hill. And my question relates to natural reserves. So City of Freo has over 70 parks and natural reserves, including native bushland, beaches, rivers, parks and open public space, and that amounts to over 1,000 hectares. These areas are crucial for canopy cover, biodiversity and recreation, and they're managed by the Parks and Landscape team, which includes urban forests and natural resources. In January, all the Friends groups, so Cantonment Hill, Boo Park, Sampson Park, Clontarf Hill and North Fremantle, met to discuss concerns that we have in common around looking after natural areas. And one of those issues that we're all really concerned about was the lack of staffing in natural resources. Currently, there's only one person on the ground, and there seems to be a pretty high turnover of staff, partly due to better conditions and pay being offered by other elsewhere. So we have no issue with the existing staff. We think they're fantastic. They do an amazing job with limited resources over many sites and environments. The Friends group planted over 13,000 plants in 24 to 25, which is listed in the annual report. We also do weeding, watering, rubbish collection, lobbying. We host students, community groups. We apply for funding and a myriad of other tasks. And most of these we can only do with the support of natural resources. Now, the city benefits greatly from all our hours of volunteer work that goes into looking after these natural areas and bush forever sites, of which we have 2 in Fremantle. Our volunteer groups are ageing and we are dealing with the effects of climate change, so it is getting harder for us to look after these areas. Our natural resources areas, our natural areas deserve better. There's heavy reliance on external contractors who do not have specialist knowledge often to care about our natural reserves. We would like to ask the city to consider increasing the in-house natural resources staff to better oversee the management and conservation of the city's natural areas. This would go a long way to supporting the Friends groups on the ground. Thank you.
Morgan, do you want to reply or do you want to take that on notice?
Thanks, Mayor Ben. Thanks for your question, Jenny. That was a loaded question, so I'll break down some of the simpler parts and take some on notice as well. I did get your question earlier, or parts of it. I can confirm that we do have a team leader and 2 field staff in the area. They are supported by external contractors to undertake some of the specialist work. And they do have a number of operational programs that are occurring out on these sites, including weeding, revegetation programs, bushfire mitigation, and a number of other routine servicing. Thanks.
And we'll take the rest on board about the
Yes.
Use of external contractors.
you.
That'll be a budget discussion for elected members. So coming up next, I've got Mark Woodcock to speak about the Resource Recovery Group, but I also have a few other folks that want to ask questions on that. So would it be all right if we did questions on the Resource Recovery Group and then we can answer them all at once? And if you have more questions beyond that, then we can circle back around. Would that be okay? Okay, great. There you go, Mark.
Cheers, thanks very much. So I've got 4 basic questions, all coming to the termination of the lease and the operation at the RRG out in Canning. One was the asset write-offs. Given the city's ownership interest in the RRG is supposed to be valued at 21% as of the last audited report, what is the total value of the investment associated with the write-off in the 2025 and 26 financial year as a result of the RRG liquidation? And why is the investment valued at $2.5 million at 30th of June, given that we knew it was closing up and all those assets were being handed off, which are now being taken by the RE Group at no cost? Booragoon loan liability. As of June 2025, the city provided a bank guarantee for their share of $1.7 million debt for the RRG office leasing facility at Aldous Place in Booragoon. What is the status of this loan following the RRG wind-up? And has the sale of any of this property or assets given the city a share of that liability, or will the ratepayers be required to fund any shortfalls? Capital risk, the new contract involves a $12.5 million upgrade to the Canning Vale facility. If the regroup fails to meet that 94.6 recovery target or faces operational insolvency, what specific legal or financial step-back rights does the city have to protect the $9.5 million currently budgeted for waste initiatives from escalating? Contingent liabilities, have requests been made to the regroup for any liabilities arising from the environmental remediation of the Canning Vale site caused by the City of Fremantle and its co-users? And what is the estimated worst-case financial exposure for the ratepayers should the site fall, require soil or groundwater treatment?
Right. Helen Cox, you had some questions about the RRG?
Helen Cox, Edmund Street, Beaconsfield. My question relates to the long-term financial plan 2535. The Resource Recovery Group, a regional local government waste management organisation in which Fremantle held a 24.15% equity stake valued at $2,461,763, was wound up on November 30th, 2025. The city also held a $389,346 loan guarantee obligation. Neither the annual report 2425 nor the long-term financial plan 2535 contain any disclosure of this matter. Why does the long-term financial plan 2535 make zero mention of the Resource Recovery Group, despite the organisation being formally wound up in November 25? What was the financial outcome of Fremantle's withdrawal from the RRG? How much of the $2,461,763 investment, as at the 30th of June 25, was recovered? In which financial year will this investment be written off? And what are the ongoing annual costs of waste management services now that the RRG is no longer operating? Thank you.
Do you have those written down? Can I hand them to the staff, or when you're done? I've already organised to email them. Okay, wonderful. Mei Ring Chen, did you? Similar questions? Okay. I'll turn it over to staff. I do know that RRG is pretty complicated, so maybe we'll just try to answer what we can.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So the Resource Recovery Group wind-up did occur on the 30th of November last year. At balance date for the 30th of June prior, there was a value in the Resource Recovery Group, and as per auditor's instructions, we put that value on the books, and that's what was carried through with the current financial statements. I expect the value of those will change through this financial year, and we are expecting that it'll be wound up prior to the 30th of June this year. And whatever the value of that is at that time, that's what we'll deal with through our books as well. There are many assets, there is cash reserves, and there is liabilities to work through with that. The proposal is that the Booragoon office will be sold. I think they are currently talking to a prospective purchaser for that. We're hoping that that will have zero liability once it's purchased. And the assets will be transferred to Regroup. So part of the proposal over a 20-year term with Regroup to continue using that facility is that assets will transfer to them, and then they'll be liable to upgrade them in accordance with the provision of those assets being transferred across. And the cities of Melville, Canning and Fremantle will be able to access those facilities into the future. The contract sum of $20 million is actually to upgrade the recycling plant. That is through a $5 million grant being provided from the state government, which the cities of Fremantle and Melville accessed, and will transfer it across to Regroup, and it's up to Regroup to provide the balance of the $7 million, and that is part of the negotiated outcome for the contract moving forward. I think we dealt with the loan liability just in the previous one that Ms Cox also asked about. I guess we'll know the outcome of the financial wind-up towards the end of this financial year as we go through, and the Resource Recovery Group themselves wind themselves up, sell the assets that are left over, distribute the cash that's remaining, and the balance of the plant will go across to Regroup. Ongoing costs of waste are still to be determined, but as we move through into the contract with Regroup, we've worked out these things. First of all, we're getting better gate fees for our recycling. We are now taking waste directly to our waste for energy supplier, so that cost has decreased because we're now not double dipping through our Resource Recovery Group. And the FOGO stuff is still continuing. So part of the agreement with Regroup is that they maintain one of those sheds for FOGO processing, and they remove and take responsibility for that processing as well, which comes at a cheaper cost than it did for the RRG when they were doing it.
Great, thank you. Mark, the other points you had on here, is that for general questions or is this related to the annual report? So that'll be for the general questions? Okay, perfect. So all of the questions that we couldn't answer here right now, and I appreciate you setting those in before, they will be on the meeting.
No, I can answer that one.
Okay, sorry.
So the City of Canning has now taken over that site again, and it's actually their contract with Regroup because the site has always been theirs, and they've taken over responsibility for that.
Great. Wonderful. But any questions that we're not able to answer tonight will be at the on the agenda for the 22nd of February. It won't be on the upcoming agenda, it'll be the meeting after. Next, Elizabeth Margros.
My name's Elizabeth Mego and I live in South Fremantle. My questions relate to the operating position and sustainability, looking at the long-term financial plan statement of comprehensive income. Can you confirm that the city's underlying operating position, including capital grants and asset sales, shows deficits of 6 to 11 million per year through the long-term financial plan period? The long-term financial plan shows materials and contracts decreasing from 40.8 million to 35.8 million, a reduction of 5 million. Please explain. What specific cost reductions account for the 5 million decrease? How is this decrease reconciled with the additional waste management cost following the wind-up? Are maintenance programs being deferred or services being reduced? What efficiency gains are assumed to achieve this reduction? The long-term financial plan projects rates increases of only 1 to 1.5% per year, which is below inflation. How will the city fund increasing costs with below inflation revenue growth? The new 20 million Fremantle Oval loan will add approximately 1.1 million per year in debt service costs. Where in the operating budgets will these costs be funded from? Year 2 to 3 of the long-term financial plan show 117 million in non-operating grants. After these one-time grants end, year 4 to 5 showing operating deficits of 11 million to 9.8 million respectively. What is the plan to address these ongoing deficits once temporary grant funds cease?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Turn it over to Matt.
Thank you. So we'll obviously comprehensively answer those questions when we receive them in writing. There was a big list there. But from what I could pick up, you were talking about the long-term financial plan. The 1.5% to 1% rate increases is actually growth in rate base, not increase in rates. The large amount of grants you see in years 2 to 3 are associated with major projects like Fremantle Oval and the depot, and all of the operating costs associated with how we're servicing them are captured in the actual long-term financial statements included in that report. That's probably what I could pick up in that list, sorry. So yeah, we'll answer those questions on notice.
And you can send those through, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Andrew Andrew?
4 syllables, English. Hello, Andrew Beaconsfield. I noticed we hit the $100 million club in the Herald for rate revenue, so well done on that, which will, mine's more than doubled, and probably going to see about a $4,500 bill come in the mail not too long. We've got 36, looking at the report here, we've got just over 36,000 residents. We've got 1.7% of those Aboriginal, 552 to be exact. I've noticed a slip that's just recently been slipping into the acknowledgement of country in the meetings that, and I'm probably finding, and I don't know whether I'm the only one, but considering, we've spent a lot of money as, this 36,000 people, and a lot of them are ratepayers, paying good money to live in Fremantle. Many have been born in Fremantle, raised in Fremantle, and to hear that we're now living on stolen land, ceded land, always will be, is I just see as disrespectful to the people that are going to have to get these hefty bills that contribute to this city. I'd like to know whether that's actually under the legislation for the Local Government Act, whether you can in fact have an activist, what is in effect an activist statement inserted into what is just a common acknowledgement of country. Thank you.
Great, thank you. There's many different versions of welcome to an acknowledgement of country. There's a lot of different versions that people can say, and I say the one that I like to say that fits me. So thank you for that, Andrew L. Now we have former councillor Maria Vujic.
Thank you. Maria Vujic, and I'm from South Fremantle. I'm going to just talk about some really simple mathematics, simple concepts. The 24-25 audited financial statements, we made a $6.3 million loss. That means we're spending more money than we raise. If you had a household and you earned $1,000 and you were spending $1,500, you'd be in trouble. Our revenue base, we call it revenue, it's fair enough, but really it's rates. It's our ordinary working class people are now on the hook for 67% of this wonderful 100,000 million revenue that we are touting as quite an achievement. I do not see any plans to increase this in any other way but a ratepayer or a grant or two that comes in randomly. Capital works. We only achieved about 45% of our capital works 24-25. But that's not the first time. We didn't achieve our capital works 22-23. We achieved about 40%. The same for 23-24, 24-25, a little bit more. And this year is a prediction. You'll make about 45. Now, these are single numbers. When we tackle them as single numbers, they don't mean much. But this is the pattern. This is the pattern of a city in financial decline. When you have an operating loss and you have to go through the various buckets and raid them, you know you're in trouble. You know you're in trouble when our 10-year financial plan, 26-27, which is only 12 months away, we have to sell an asset. We must sell an asset. That is not a city in a good financial position. And then for the entire other years of that 10-year plan, there's planned operating losses. How could you possibly be impressed with such a record? Now, all I can see, these are simple mathematics. If you had a budget that you ran like the city runs ours, you couldn't kick yours down the road. Of course you couldn't. You'd have to go to the banks, you'd have to go to family, you'd have to tighten your belt, any number of things. And on top of that, 67% of all of our rates goes into administration. And yet there is not one plan that we can count on that's going to be a revenue earner for the ratepayers and support us. Because at 67%, we've got nowhere to go. We've got 34%, and then we're finished. So I suggest we take it really seriously. What the administration's talking here is about, don't worry, we're going to kick the can down the road, we're going to shuffle our buckets around, and we're going to do some fudging, and we're going to make sure that nobody really understands the figures. All we're doing is kicking the can down the road. Now, here's a challenge for you. Where are you, Mayor Lorva? Why, hello. Here's a question for you. I notice that we're going to be asked to pass the budget, or are we going to receive the budget? If you are so certain it is a good, true and accurate record, why don't we say this is an honest and true record and put it to a vote?
Thank you, Councillor Vujic. I think that question was for me. Every year, the annual general meeting of electors, there is a vote to receive the annual report, and that is what is on everyone's chair or people have looked at in advance. So the vote is just to receive it. It's not to endorse it or anything. So next, we have John Dowson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Dowson, Fremantle Society. Look, in previous years, we've been so disappointed with the city plan, the budget, and with the report that we have voted it down. But we have a new mayor, we have a new council, and I think we have an extraordinary mayor with a lot of dynamism and goodwill. He came to the committee meeting of the Fremantle Society and survived 2 hours of us. He answered every single question. He took those questions to the CEO, and you can't ask more than that.